Welcome to Hidden History Stories from the Secret City. I'm Keith McDaniel, along with my co host, Ray Smith. Good morning, Ray.
Good morning, Keith. How are you today?
I'm good. I'm good.
All right. Well, we've got a good guest returning who Wade's been with us before. But Wade, you were in another job when we were here before. Wade
Right.
is mayor of Roane County, and he's a good friend. We've been working together probably more closely just recently than we have in a while. But it all came about when this new Department of Energy Secretary, Chris Wright, made his first visit to Oak Ridge, and he uttered those words. Wade, you remember? Manhattan Project 2.0.
That's
And
right.
Wade and me talked about, what did he say? Did he say Manhattan Project 2? Did he say Manhattan Project 2.0? What did he say? But the fact is, he wanted something to happen and to happen quick. And that's where we're going to talk about today. What have we done since Chris Wright came here and Wade Creswell got excited? Am I right, Wade?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, because we know what Manhattan Project means more than most.
That's right.
Yeah.
We do. And we understand one of the first things I believe that Wade did when he began to realize the magnitude of what had been asked of us is he contacted me and he said, Ray, can you give the history of the Manhattan Project to this group of folks we're going to call together to talk about Manhattan Project 2.0? And I said, sure. Yeah, I can do that. I can talk for an hour. He gave me 10 minutes.
But it helped set the course for a lot of what's happened since then. That's right.
Well, we did. We talked about it and we realized that we didn't have much time. The point, just for our listeners, our viewers can, just so they'll know exactly what I'm talking about. The point was that we had the Manhattan Project here, and in 2 years and 9 months, went from a 3,000 population farmland to 75,000 population city, 82,000 people working here in 4 facilities on 3 main sites. And the point is, we had Colonel Nichols, we had General Groves, and we had the backing of the government. They wanted this thing to happen. Well, if that's the same thing today, then we need to get on it. We need to figure out who's the leaders, what are the decisions that need to be made. By the way, I learned from General Groves' grandson, Dick Groves, that General Groves would only take 1 hour to make the most difficult decision. Now, we can't even think in those kind of terms today.
No.
But that's what's going to have to happen. Wait, we're going to have to make some things happen. We're going to have to get some things going. And oh, by the way, I'm proud of what we've got going here. Let's talk about that a little bit. Let's not be
Hey,
negative. Let's be
hey,
positive about it.
Ray, let me interrupt here for just a
Oh,
second
go ahead.
to
Yeah.
give people a point of reference. Wade, you're the mayor of Roane County. Um, how, okay, and when people think of Oak Ridge, that's Anderson County. Tell us a little bit about the overlap and why it's important that both of these counties are involved in all these projects that are happening.
So I mean, you do have to go back to Manhattan Project and to get a sense of why we find ourselves not just where we are, but the geography of it too. So when in 1942, you had Kingston, you had Clinton with very little in between. You had kind of Oliver Springs, sort of in that direction, but off, if you draw a direct line between Kingston and Clinton. So, you know, Oak Ridge, the reservation, 60,000 acres that was procured by General Groves in 1942, is really split between Roane County and Anderson County. Now, yeah, you're right. A lot of people, especially outside of the area, think of Oak Ridge and associate it with Anderson County. But 40% of Oak Ridge is in Roane County. In fact, almost all of the area that we've been talking about and locating these companies has been in Roane County. About a little over 2/3 of the Oak Ridge Reservation is in Roane County. Now, the population base for Oak Ridge is primarily in Anderson County, but the industrial base, which is on the reservation, is in Roane County. So, that that does create a unique dynamic, but it also has created the dependence of Anderson County and Roane County to work together with the city to help make that happen. And I wanted to talk a little bit about that alignment and how we were able to achieve that today, hopefully. So I don't want to. I want to stay on the path that you all want to stay on as far as a storyline here.
You're doing fine. I'll say that you and the mayor of Anderson County, Terry Frank, are making a good team in making those cooperative efforts. I believe the city of Oak Ridge is eager to be included in what we're calling the nuclear renaissance. So they look to both of you, the counties, to be supportive, to be encouraging. And I've seen
we have a great working relationship now. We really do. Now, relationships are work every day. You never take anything for granted. It's never done. Just in marriage and friendship, you got to work at relationships. That's the way it always will be, and we do. And we got a great working relationship now, but it hasn't always been that way because the secret city was a secret city on purpose. That didn't just happen. It was meant to be that way by design, and that left a legacy and a culture where information went in, but information didn't come out. So when we got to a place, this nuclear identity that we have gravitated around and chosen to pursue collectively, that's a relatively new thing. Not our nuclear past, but for our communities to align around a nuclear identity. I remember I worked at Oak Ridge National Lab from 2018 to 2021. And I remember having this conversation with Jeff Smith that our region at the time in the late, let's say 1819, they could have chosen 4 or 5 or 6 even different identities to pursue if we were going to create a cluster of industry around economic development. It could have been around supercomputing. It could have been around advanced composites. It could have been around isotope production. We could have gone in any of those directions. But a lot of stars aligned for us to have achieved the success we've seen in the last couple of years. So if it's okay with you, I'd like to tell that story about how I got engaged in that. Okay, so in December of 22, I had just been elected in August, and so I'm a faithful member of ETech. It's the greatest networking organization I've ever heard of. But I remember being at an ETech meeting on a December morning, and Commissioner Stuart McWhirter of Tennessee Department of Economic Community Development was a speaker, and he was just presenting in general. But he got to the topic of talking about how LG had just located in Clarksville in Montgomery County. And he was telling the story about how the president of LG answered the question. Commissioner McWhirter had asked him, "So why did you choose Montgomery County?" And the president of LG said, "Because this community is so aligned, from the state level to the county level to the city level to all of the stakeholders. Everybody was speaking the same language, was supportive of one another." Well, I heard that message, and I thought, I've been involved in economic development in Oak Ridge for a while, and I thought, man, that is not our story. At one time, there were 17 different organizations across the Oak Ridge Reservation that had economic development as part of their mission, and none of them were communicating with each other and working in partnership to successfully recruit projects to come. So if you're divided on that, you're not going to win projects. So it got me to thinking. And I started reaching out across the reservation, reached out, of course, to Mayor Frank, who's been such a great friend and mentor to me as a new mayor. Reached out, of course, to Mayor Gooch, and they had a brand new city manager at the time, Randy Heeman, was coming on board, or would eventually come on board soon. And then reach out to the contractor leadership, DOE leadership, economic development leadership, and just put us all into a room. And basically said, okay, can we admit we have a problem in alignment? Can we admit that we're not well aligned at all? And that's somewhere we want to get to. And everybody agreed, yes, we were not aligned, but we want to be. Okay, that's the first step to admitting that we have a problem here and that we want to work together to fix it. And then that led to a series of meetings over the next really year and a half, where the city and the counties work together to create what eventually would become the Oak Ridge Corridor Development Corporation. So, and we got to give a ton of credit to both county commissions and the city council in doing a joint resolution that stated we wanted to work together as governments in economic development around the nuclear energy industry, to have a nuclear identity with these shared goals in economic development. So that led to the creation of the Oak Ridge Corridor Development Corporation, and that created an alignment which had never existed before. That board consists of course, all three leaders of our governments. Our economic developers are on there. Stakeholders from the contractors and DOE are on there. So we're working. It's separate from any government. It's a 501c3 that we're creating, and so it has independence, but it has alignment. And we're convinced that alignment that we're able to demonstrate now is one of the big reasons why we've been winning such big projects, which led to Roane, which is a company that's going to enrich uranium, largest private capital investment in state history. It's led to BWXT's announcement of being here. It's led to Oklo announcing a presence here, Radiant Industries or Energy that's going to be here, and there's more to come. So I'm firmly convinced that our ability to achieve a base level of alignment has been a huge key to our success.
There's two. There's two you didn't mention, and I know I do the same thing when I start talking about all the companies that are coming here. If I don't have it written down, there's so many of them I can't remember all of them.
Right.
The two that I would want to add to it is Kairos Power, which is building the first demonstration small modular reactor, and the second is TVA. And if you stop and think about it, TVA is a huge contributor to the identity that we have. They are going to be using the Clinch River Breeder reactor site, and I believe they're going to build 3, maybe 4 small modular reactors. So,
Ray, we could keep on. You got TRISO-X, you got Type 1
yeah,
fusion,
TRISO-X, you can't leave them out. That's for sure. They're doing a bang up job of and what what they're telling me is this is just the first phase. The next phase is going to be even larger than the first phase.
Yeah, and so that's where Mayor Frank and I have really been focusing a lot of our attention. Mike McGill, who's our president of Oak Ridge Corridor, is doing a phenomenal job recruiting these projects. But their original equipment manufacturers, OEMs, tier 1 OEMs locating on the reservation, there is no nuclear supply chain. You know, when the United States stopped building nuclear reactors in the 80s, it just the industry died. You know, and everybody went and did something else. So we've got to build a regional supply chain, tier 2 to tier 5 supply chain, to support these OEMs that we're bringing onto the reservation. So Mayor Frank and I have been working with counties within a 100-mile radius, their mayors, their economic developers, to try to get them ready from being nuclear friendly and getting their companies open to the thought of working in the nuclear industry, because we're going to have a huge need in workforce, housing, and supply chain. So yeah, keeping this regional, it's absolutely imperative for the companies that we're recruiting now to be successful.
And I ran into, speaking of that, I ran into Teresa Duncan this week, the other night, and she's just been named by the Tennessee Board of Regents. She's at Roane State, which has a campus both in Roane County and in Oak Ridge. She's been named, Ray, you may need to help me, I think, Nuclear Workforce Development Director or Training Director or something like that for the TBR.
Yeah.
Of course, she sort of was doing that at Roane State for Roane State, but now I guess she's doing it for the whole TBR state.
Yeah, I got a huge credit to TBR for thinking in this pattern, because this is exactly the type of alignment and coordination that's going to be required for us to supply the workforce that these industries are going to need. So, for example, everybody was doing kind of their own, everybody sees this coming, is trying to do their own thing to support the nuclear industry, but there was very little coordination on supplying exactly what's needed. So Teresa's new role really represents this overall effort that we're going to have to achieve in every area that we're working in to make sure that real needs are being identified and then met in a coordinated fashion. So what I would foresee coming as the next step of that would be TBR working with their partners in the UT system, and both of them working in the K through 12 school districts.
Well,
So that we are creating pathways into nuclear industries as far back as we can go. Sixth, third grade. I mean, who knows how far back we can go to get kids ready to go straight into what I think is the best jobs in the world when they're 18 years old, when they graduate high school. Now, that's not just something we've been able to do in public education in quite some time, is to have kids who are truly ready to enter the workforce at 18 years old. This gives us an opportunity to do that. And Teresa's role, I think, is going to be critical.
We just in the last couple of weeks, I've been tasked. Of course, I teach video production at Roane County High School in Kingston. And I've been tasked with producing 6 short videos by February 1st that promote the Big 6 nuclear programs at Roane State for the county, for all of Roane County high school students.
Fantastic.
So they'll see what the opportunities there are available to them, along with the other opportunities. The TCAT, it's going to be a part of that road show, the dual enrollment road show, or whatever they're calling it.
Yeah,
it goes around to all the schools, and but at least they'll have a familiarity with the opportunities for those nuclear programs where you can go for a year or 2 years and get a certificate, and go into a higher paying job in the nuclear industry right here.
Absolutely.
Right here in Roane County, in Anderson.
That's right.
So
we know our largest employers. We're not trying to recruit another Y12 or Oak Ridge National Laboratory. Those are anchors for our local economy, for our country, really. And they guide, they drive our economy locally. What we're talking about now, though, is meeting a national imperative. Ray mentioned it. We didn't really got a chance to talk to Manhattan Project 2.0 yet. We will, I'm sure. But, that has to happen here for reasons we'll get into. It has to happen here, but it also brings private jobs that can really diversify our economy. If you're talking about economic development in Roane and Anderson counties, it's been difficult for us. Anderson County has been much more successful than we have around the automotive industry, but historically speaking, but it's been difficult to recruit general industry to come into our counties because they got to compete against DOE wage rates, which are fantastic. But the nuclear industry can do that. The nuclear industry pays relatively on the same scale that DOE pays in general. So this is really not just something that we have to do for the future of the country. This truly is diversifying our economy in bringing great paying jobs. That if we can get our kids ready for them before others, it's going to create just these pipelines that really raise our overall standard of living across our region.
And yeah. I was just going to say, and what are going to be some of the residual effects of having these industries up and running in the county? I mean, it's going to have an impact on everything, not
everything.
Just,
this is transformational, Keith. It's difficult for me to communicate the scale, the level of transformation that happens here. So let me try to create some context. So in Roane County, we just did a reappraisal. Just had to go through every 5 years, go through a reappraisal. So after the reappraisal, the value of all properties across the county, all structures, all parcels, everything is about $2.5 billion that's taxable. So we've recruited $7 billion of new industry, taxable industry, into Roane County in a 3-year time frame. That's almost triple the current value of everything that we have. So when you start talking about not just the high-paying jobs that those industries bring, but the level of tax dollars and tax revenue that brings, that's going to enable us as local governments to do things that have been challenges for us for decades, like build schools, build roads, build parks. You're talking about lifestyle changes, overall quality of life changes for our people. That's why government exists, right? Is to try to foster a better quality of life for its people. And we really and truly are going to be able to do that. Those are the residual effects to these companies coming here to be part of a nuclear ecosystem that you can't find anywhere else. And then that's just the direct need. That's the direct benefit for us. The overall overarching benefit is that it gives our country a chance to win the race for energy and AI dominance. That the way, going back to Ray's original point, as Secretary Wright puts it, it's Manhattan Project 2.0. Well, Manhattan Project 1.0 was an existential crisis that required the greatest engineering feat in the history of mankind to win. And so when Ray and I were first talking about that, we questioned whether he knew what he was talking about or not. Does Secretary Wright really know what that means? We know what that means. Does he know what that means? And the more we learned, the more we understood he knew exactly what that means. It's exactly what he meant. And because of this artificial intelligence race with China and as an adversary, we have to, as a country, overcome some challenges that have developed over the last few decades that keep us from being successful right now in regulation, in just the requirements it takes. Even as Ray mentioned, just the ability to think like our grandfathers thought while this was happening. We don't think that way anymore. We've got to change our way of thinking. We got to change our processes. We've got to change our regulation, all while doing it in a way that is respectful for community and environmental health. That sure didn't exist at the time. And we can't go down that path again of just absolutely destroying our community health and environment because of an existential crisis. We've got to find a way to go fast and go safe at the same time.
And
so we'll see if we're able to pull it off.
I think we have that capability, and I think you're right in the things like the fact that they have reduced the requirements for reviewing new nuclear plants down to a maximum of 18 months. Now, it used to be 10 years. You understand? Yep. It's ridiculous. Now, I don't know if 18 months is right, but at least they're trying to push that down, and I think that's extremely important. Now, let me piggyback on the Board of Regents just a minute about what Teresa has done. She brought all of those members to Oak Ridge a couple of weeks ago. Wade, she gave me 10 minutes, just like you did. So I got to talk to them for just a few minutes about the Manhattan Project. Oh, by the way, interesting thing, all of these Board of Regents across the state, as you know, I like to introduce my talk by saying that I'm from a small crossroads community in Middle Tennessee, and just to get people to understand where I'm coming from. And there was two people in the room that knew exactly where that little community was. Now, nobody in East Tennessee has a clue what that is, but I'm telling you, we're reaching the entire state in that Board of Regents. And there was excellent presentations made there. Stephen Stryfer is one that's doing an outstanding job. In my mind, taking over where the kind of leadership from General Groves and Colonel Nichols led the Manhattan Project 1. He's one of the people that are going to be in the middle of what we're doing with Manhattan Project 2.0. And he's doing an outstanding job with that. Another one, Jason Hatfield, he's with TriSoX. I worked with Jason at Y12 for a number of years. So he's local. But he's doing an amazing job. He's the one that told me, he said, Ray, what you see out at TriSoX now is just phase one. It's going to be, I believe he said 300 employees. Phase two is going to be 500 employees. And they're going to build it just as soon as they finish phase one. And BWXT built a building in a matter of what, 2 to 3 weeks? They put a building.
Yeah. Tilt wall construction. Yeah, they broke ground in June. They're going to finish next month. It's unbelievable.
And I mean, we're seeing it happen right here now. What Chris Wright asked us to do is actually taking place right in front of our eyes. We did a nuclear science week here with the American Museum of Science and Energy Foundation. And I was amazed. I went on to what they call the dirt tour, and they took us up to the area where Roane is going to be. man, that's an amazing piece of property up there. That's flat land up on that ridge top. I didn't realize that. But that's a beautiful spot they've got there at the corner of Highway 95 and 58.
Mhm.
I mean, that whole area out there is just amazing how fast it's coming up.
And Ray, you mentioned Kairos Power. I was out there yesterday. I think they broke ground on their engineering test unit 3, maybe in June,
Yeah.
May, June, something like that. It's not been long. Is it or late spring maybe? It's the exterior is done. It stands
Oh,
80 feet in the air.
yeah.
And I mean it's amazing. And they've
Oh,
already poured the concrete and they're working on the foundation for Hermes 1 reactor. That they broke ground on that maybe what in July, August, something like that. So it is amazing the speed at which we're going now, and that's what's going to have to happen.
it is. And, you know, we just opened the Wilcox K-25 Interpretive Center. They're at the near the K-25 Atomic History Center. And if you go up there into that viewing area and just look a little to your left, you know what you see? Kairos Power. That new
That's right.
right there, coming
And
right
if you
up.
look further left, you see where Radiant's going to be.
That radiant's going to be where K-27 and 29 were, just around to the left. And by
Yeah.
the way, Radiant is an amazing one. When you think about it, they're going to build micro reactors that you can put on a truck and deliver where it needs to be.
Yeah.
That's
Take
amazing.
to Mars.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah,
Amazing.
when Doug Bernauer got up and told the story about how this kind of spun out of SpaceX, I was absolutely blown away. In that, the thought came for this company came about when they're thinking about how to power Mars, and then they realized that there are way shorter term applications for this technology that they could produce right here in the country, way before we get to Mars. And it's just so inspiring and exciting to know that's happening right here.
Let me tell you a little story quickly about the Mars trip that they're trying to make. Now, this, I've been retired since 2017. This happened a year or two before I retired. So it's back when they were first starting to talk about going to Mars. And an individual at Y12 came to me and he said, Ray, I'm going to a conference in Houston, Texas that NASA's putting on, and they're going to begin talking about going to Mars. Now, one of the things they're going to talk about is how are they going to bring material back from Mars? And I said, well, hey, we built the boxes, the moon boxes that brought the material back from the moon. He said, that's what I want to talk to you about. He said, I want to take that moon box that we have down to Houston and I want to put it up on the stage and cover it with a black cloth. And when they ask about what are we going to do to bring material back from Mars, I'm going to unveil that moon box. I told him, I said, all right, let's do it. But I said, you need to go to Knoxville to the airport and tell them you're going to be bringing an aluminum box through security. And I said, the other thing is you cannot put it in, you can't let it get away from you. You got to buy another seat for it if you need to, and keep it with you all the time. He did that. He took that
Wow,
box to Texas and showed them that, we can make whatever you want. And
that's
okay.
right. That's right. My
And
grandfather actually worked on that box.
how about
He
that? Worked on the moon box.
shop at the lab, and it may not be in the box, but it was on some of the tools that
Yeah.
were used to extract material. Yeah.
Yeah, I can't think about the moon box without remembering that we actually built a golf club. We didn't do it at Y12, but it was thought of and designed
Yeah.
that went on the end of the handle that we made at Y12. But they put a golf club on it and hit a golf ball on the moon. It's amazing what can be happening in Oak Ridge. And you talked about places for people to live. I was talking to David Wilson just a few days ago, and he told me that there's another company coming into town that's going to be building apartments. And he thinks that it's almost ready. I was talking to Mike McGill, this person who's working with the Oak Ridge Corridor Development Corporation, and he told me that there's another company right on the almost ready to announce, and he's speaking in terms of $4 billion. It's amazing if you start adding them up. The number he uses now, and I don't know what your number is. We can't keep up with it. He uses $17 billion as the total amount that may be invested in Oak Ridge.
Yeah, and it is a range somewhere around there. As an elected official, I got to be a little more
I
conservative in my
understand.
figures, as you can imagine.
Yeah, I do. That's why I said
So
I don't know what your
I try to
number.
stick, yeah, just try to stick with what we've announced so far. But when I know that the projects that we're working on, and when you add in like TBA's potential investment, and yeah, you can get up to numbers pretty really that high pretty
Astounding.
quickly. And Ray, that's not even taken into account. There are numerous AI data center development companies that want to be close to these future power sources. And so the size and scope of the projects in that area, especially for capital investment, it dwarfs the nuclear industry even. So there's so much going on at the same time right now. I sense where you were headed there a minute ago, as far as a constraint that we're going to have is how are we going to accommodate these workforce needs from a housing perspective. You've got Anderson County and Roane County that have mirrored each other. Anderson County is quite a bit bigger, but have mirrored each other in growth for decades, been relatively flat. And so now, because of spillover from Knox County, a lot of spillover from Knox County, Loudoun County for a while has been the fastest growing county in the state. But they're kind of pushing back on growth right now some. So you're seeing a spillover effect from net inward migration coming from all over the country. People have found us out. They know what a beautiful, incredible place this is to live, work, and play. So and then you talk about the growth that we're creating in this industry and the jobs that it's going to bring and the supply chain that's going to develop. From my seat, our biggest challenge is in housing, is in making sure that we can accommodate for the workforce needs without them having to live 100 miles away. Now, in the county level, when you're talking about rural areas in particular, you run into resistance to growth pretty quickly. Rural areas where there's agricultural land, where there's 2-lane roads that can't, people think that can't accommodate. You've got to do some really significant upfront planning to make sure that you're going to be able to accommodate for the workforce needs and respect your community's identity. And so that's where we find ourselves in Roane County is and the way we're going to tackle that has been trying to do some very targeted land use planning on the short term. So that we're promoting growth in areas that have all the infrastructure that wouldn't cause major disruptions in lifestyle, and then do the opposite and protect areas where it doesn't make sense to our people to grow. So that creates a trade-off, I think, that people could live with in the short term, so that hopefully we can maximize our opportunities in new residential development for the workforce needs. Now, long term, we've got to do that in a more comprehensive way. But we needed to have been doing this land use planning 10 years ago before we could have ever seen that this was going to be a need. Ray, I remember TVA coming to ETech and rolling out their integrated resource plan in 2015. And the demand curve for energy was flat to decreasing because of efficiencies that we saw. No one saw until the last just a few years this incredible increase on the demand curve for new power generation. So we're way behind on the planning that should have taken place quite a while back. Nevertheless, we've got to make it happen right here. So that's where I'm focusing most of my attention right now, out of necessity. While we're always still fostering and recruiting and trying to develop this new ecosystem.
I think you're right on target to do that. I think in order to, I mean, you talk about Tennessee Board of Regents, you talk about building housing. We've got to educate a new workforce hurriedly, and we've got to have a place for them to live. Go ahead, Keith. I think he's right on target.
I was just going to say, you're absolutely right in the fact that, a high-paying job may keep some people here, but if they don't have the amenities of a quality community and quality lifestyle, they'll go someplace else. So that's an important thing to do. And the benefit of it is, like you said, you're talking about the tax revenue will allow you to do some things that will make it just like they did originally in Oak Ridge. They came in and said, we've got to build a community for these people. or they won't
Right.
stay. And
And
uh,
we
you know,
said they said at the time, excuse me for interrupting, but the important point. General Groves hired Alden Blankenship and he said, build the best school system in the nation. It's that kind of thinking that we have to have as well. These people that
Amen.
come and live here, they're going to have to see the amenities that they would be accustomed to
yeah,
anywhere else in the world.
that's exactly right.
That's such a needle to thread for us because we just talked about two separate things that both have to happen. We have to recruit a workforce to come in here and then be able to accommodate them in housing. We also have to develop our own, train our own kids to fill these needs. Both of them have to happen. Well, the reason why Oak Ridge, why the nuclear renaissance has to happen in Oak Ridge is because there's really only about 5 communities across the country, depending on how you define that, but there's really only about 5 nuclear friendly communities across the country. The Oak Ridge MSA, which is Knoxville MSA, is the only one of those nuclear friendly communities that have 1 million people in that MSA that you could use as a workforce, right? Or retrain, recruit that can come from that workforce. The problem is that because of this net inward migration we've seen since COVID, the average price for a home in that MSA is now well over $400,000. I've got a 17-year-old senior in high school going to UT next year, going to be in nuclear engineering. And so he's excited, and we're excited because hopefully it'll keep him home. That's the whole reason why I kind of nudged him this way. Hey, look this way, because we're hoping to keep him home, right? But he and I have talked about it. He's paid attention to a lot of the things I've been talking about. He's like, Dad, I graduate college. I mean, I'm not going to be able to afford to live here. So we've got to be thinking about how our kids, how starter families who maybe not work in the nuclear industry, we can keep them here and give them opportunities to live where they grew up. Because coming out of college, you can't afford a house over $400,000. And if you do, you're going to be in debt up to your eyeballs forever. And it's not going to let people stay here. We've got to overcome that challenge. And it really can only be met by increasing the supply.
I agree. I had a chance not too long ago to speak to a group of community college presidents from all over the nation. And I was talking to them about Manhattan Project 2.0 and what we were doing. One of them held his hand up and said, look, I'm from Wyoming. We've got a lot of flat land out there. Why don't you build these nuclear power plants out in Wyoming? I said, well, let me ask you this. What city in Wyoming would not allow a Target department store to come in, turn down a racetrack that was wanted to be built here, but are delighted to have nuclear power plants built in their city limits? He said, I don't have one. And that's what you're saying, Wade.
That is exactly right.
Across the nation. I'm sorry.
Yes.
Go ahead.
No,
Yeah.
no, I was just going to say, and we in this new industry, and like you were saying, the kids that graduate, that live here now, that grew up here, we want them to stay. We don't want them, because traditionally, for a lot of them, they had to go someplace else to pursue the career that they wanted.
Right.
So this is an opportunity not only to bring in new people, but also to keep the people, the kids that are here now in our community, to build their families and build a life here at home.
Yeah. I'm going to say a couple of things to both of those points. Number one, Ray, back to your point about the nuclear friendly, we can't ever take that for granted that we are as nuclear friendly as we are, simply because you have states like Wyoming, for example, in Indiana, Texas for sure, Virginia. They're throwing truckloads of money out there for trying to attract nuclear companies to come to their states. And at a state,
that's what we have.
yeah, yes, and at the state level, the officials are like, yes, come on. But then when you get down to the community level, where the rubber meets the road, then the communities just aren't ready. That's exactly how we recruited Radiant. It's a little story here. So Mike McGill had been working with Radiant officials for a little while and trying to recruit them. They have been here a few times, had actually been here for quite a while, but they had kind of settled set on a site in Wyoming and had worked through the legislature some to develop some incentives there. But this community where they were going to settle just absolutely pushed back hard. So this was during the Nuclear Opportunities Workshop back in July. So I'm at this conference in Knoxville, and Mike McGill's there. And Mike shows me this article coming out of Wyoming about this community saying no to radiant. Well, while he's showing me this, there's a panel on stage in this room that we're in at the Knoxville Convention Center, and there's the chief nuclear officer for Radiance on stage. So I told Mike, I said, Mike, the second she comes off that stage, we're going to ambush her, and we're going to show her this article, and we're going to tell her this would never happen in Oak Ridge. You need to be here. So that's exactly what we did. I mean, she set 1 foot down on the ground off that stage, and we just boxed her in and said, hey, this is who we are. Welcome. We need you here. This would never happen here. Come be here. She said, give me 10 days. I'm going to meet with my board in 10 days. I see what you're saying. I'm watching it happen throughout this conference. Just give me a little time. 2 months later, we announced Radiant in Oak Ridge. And it's because that those communities across the country, they do not have the understanding, the experience, the familiarity with the nuclear industry that we have been blessed with for 82 years.
Right.
So, and Keith, I can't remember the point I was going to make.
Yeah, talking about keeping the kids here, keeping kids here, instead of them having to leave to go someplace else.
Yeah, I mean, we all want that. Nobody wants our kids to just go figure out what you want to do and run away far away. We're still a small town environment. We want multi generations here. I want to help raise my grandkids right here. I don't want to have to retire and go chase them across the country. So yeah, we're trying to still maintain that small town identity of how we grew up. At the same time, we've got this train coming at us that we've got to figure out how help it steer and stay on the tracks, so that this becomes the kind of community that we want it to be for future generations.
I wanted to add, and this is kind of off the topic for just a little bit, but explain what's happening out at the Kingston Steam Plant.
Sure. So, and some of this is not, I think some of this is still fluid, but throughout the previous administration, there was obviously a huge movement away from fossil fuels. And TVA had been responsive in its planning to that movement by planning to retire all coal-fired power plants. So you saw Bull Run, obviously was retired and decommissioned. And we'll get to Type 1 maybe just a little bit, Type 1 fusion. But Kingston was still on that same schedule. It just had a little bit more life left in it than Bull Run did, based on however they assessed the condition of their facilities. But they were planning on decommissioning it, I want to say, by 27, 28 timeframe. And then so you have change in administration, a total change in priorities and direction. There was already been planning to replace the Kingston coal plant with a gas plant, just a more efficient fossil fuel, of course. So that project began this year. The planning had been going on for a couple of years, but that project began this year. It's amazing the amount of progress they've made on that site. TVA put out an aerial drone flyover this week that showed the progress made on the site. It's incredible. So they announced they're going to build that plant there. They're also going to put solar panels and batteries on the old ash spill site where that happened. And then, there's no official announcement yet, but there's a lot of talk around TVA maintaining the coal plant for a while. And the whole point is just as much power generation as we can create. We need every electron on the grid that we can find right now. And if the coal plant can continue to operate a while, then I think that they will head that direction officially soon. I don't know for sure. It's just, rumors that we continue to hear. But you're talking about a facility that goes from, I think the Kingston plant right now with coal can generate like 1,200 megawatts. If you throw gas and solar plus the battery on top of that and keep coal running, you're getting up, 2,500 to 3,000 megawatts. So, and don't quote me on that. It's just it's a guess on where it's going to end up.
But you're saying they could do all of it. They can do gas and renewables as well as coal.
And I think that's the future of our energy production in the company is all of the in the country. It's all of the above. We've got to do everything.
Well, you
And
Google.
I just heard just this week that TVA they're working on battery, and that may be part of it. The battery thing to where they could store like up to 1.5 megawatts of power just in batteries.
Yes.
So I know that's kind of, and that would be like a small coal powered plant.
And here's the crazy thing, and I understand from a business perspective why it's difficult for TVA to make these decisions, because you're building capacity really for about 2 weeks out of the year. You've got to provide maximum power capacity for when it gets down to 0 and when it gets up to 100. Well, in East Tennessee, that's really probably about 2 weeks out of the year, maybe, right? And everything in between there, they're at like 50%. So you have all this excess generation that they can sell during that time, but or even shut down and keep on hiatus for a little while. But that creates a really complicated business structure and model to be able to build out all this. Yeah.
Understand the artificial intelligence data centers run 24 hours a day. And we've got a RFP out right now for 2 of them to come into Oak Ridge. And I heard, and again, I can't be quoted on this because it's just Ray talking out of his head, but I've heard that there's another one coming that's already looking at the area that's known as Happy Valley.
There are talks. There are definitely talks ongoing.
Leave it at that. But
let's leave it at that.
Let it be known that a number of artificial intelligence data centers may very well be built in the area that we're talking about. But it's not just here. They're being built all over. If you look at the projection of increased electrical demand, and you mentioned it a while ago, for years it's been flat, 1, 2, 3% increase at most. You're talking about 30% increase in the next 5 years.
Yes.
Huge amount of power is required for those AI data centers.
But here's what's going to have to happen in the short term. I don't think there's any way around this. Is TVA and the federal government are going to have to get to a place that allows for these data centers to generate their own power behind the meter.
Yes.
There's just no other way TVA can scale up. And there's no other way. All private and public utilities can scale up enough to meet these needs. They're going to have to allow for generation on site behind the meter to do it.
And I think they're doing that. And as you know, the one in Memphis has already created its own power. And I think you're going to others too. I don't think there's any alternative to that.
Not in the short term. They're wanting to be here because they see nuclear coming, but we're still a little ways off before it really meets the need.
So let's wrap up by talking about Manhattan Project 2.0 again. Just say that what are the things you see that are happening, and without exposing anything that's being held close right now, what do you see our future in the next 6 months to a year that we're going to show the nation that we can do a Manhattan Project 2.0 in Oak Ridge?
I think I would compare it to sprinting on a high wire. We are going to be heading in this direction as fast as we can go, trying to maintain some balance without falling off. And that's exactly the way Manhattan Project 1 was.
Absolutely.
They didn't know, Ray, you know this better than anybody. They didn't know how to get to the finish line first. So they did multiple things to try to figure out how to be the first to get there. And they did. And in fact, they did it a couple different ways through plutonium and uranium. But I think it's going to be similar in that regard, and that we're going to have to figure out how to build reactors as quickly as possible, both old technology and new technology. We're going to have to produce fuel faster than possible. Again, old technology and new technology, and those companies are going to be here. We got to develop a supply chain, from everything from reactor vessel and advanced nuclear welding to the parts that don't exist for these advanced technologies yet. all of this has to happen at the same time. This is just on the fission side. We haven't even talked about in Anderson County on the fusion side of the equation, which is happening with type 1 fusion at Bull Run.
Yeah.
I think you'll continue to see a spin out of the lab of those technologies that are going to happen, which is, we look at gas as the bridge, natural gas is the bridge to nuclear fission nuclear. Fission is the bridge to fusion. If you look at the spectrum where we're headed for energy production over long term. So it's all of this at the same time as fast as we can go.
It's
and
just
if
like,
we don't,
And an example of that is just what happened at the Oak Ridge National Laboratory within the last few weeks. All of a sudden, you've got not only the next supercomputer being built, the one beyond that is being designed. And, oh, by the way, a private industry said, look, we want to put your computer system in right now. And it happened. It's that kind of thing that we're going to begin to see and have to see if we're going to make this transition to Manhattan Project.
This is a perfect way to wrap this up. Ray, our people aren't ready for this level of change.
Yeah, no.
We don't think this way yet. We don't think the way our grandfathers did, and it is going to require our people, and by I say our people, I mean across the country, to understand what's at stake. And there's just such distrust. I don't know if it's distrust or if it's just disbelief or a lack of focus. But our people don't understand exactly where we're headed if we aren't able to get our hands around this challenge that's right before us. It's difficult to communicate. In Manhattan Project 1.0, it was easier to understand because you could look across. You could look at the the newsreels before the movies, and you see the updates going on in the war. It's right in your face, and you can see it. We got to do this for the war effort. Well, there's no declared war. This is an undeclared war that we're in, right? So people don't even know if it's real or not. So I think that ultimately, if you step way back and look at this issue, from as far back as you can see, I think that's our biggest challenge, is to get buy-in and some type of unity in pulling together on this war effort this is what it's going to take. It's going to require great sacrifice, just like our grandfathers did. And it's going to take us pulling together in ways we've not done in this country in a very long time.
Well, Wade, I tell you, I think you're in a unique position and you're uniquely qualified for the kind of leadership that we need in our government. And I appreciate you taking the time to talk with us today, because I believe you're right on the forefront, right at the head of what we're trying to accomplish. And looking and letting you talk about what you see we need to do, I think it's vitally important that we get all of our folks to understand the urgency associated with this. And it's not going to happen because you spent an hour here on this video with us, but it's this kind of communication that's going to have to happen in all avenues. We're going to have to make our people understand the urgency of what we're facing. And I'm confident that we can do it. I think we've got the capable people, yourself included, and Terry Frank is doing a marvelous job in Anderson County as well. But we've got the leadership of the industry coming into Oak Ridge. I mean, when you hear Roane talk about what their plans are, you hear Creswell talk about it. I mean, Kairos Power. If only half of what we've got coming happens, it's going to be huge.
That's exactly right.
Anything that we've ever seen before, bigger than the Manhattan Project 1.0. So it's an exciting time for us here in this area of Tennessee. And I don't care what Texas does, we're going to beat them.
Well, I love talking with you guys. I just enjoy the conversation. I love you see I can get pretty passionate about this, but the program you all do, this mission you all have to share this type of information about what happens here is so important to our culture. It's important to our future. And I love talking to you guys, and I just really appreciate the invitation to come on your program.
Thank you very much. And if people need a reminder of what can happen in a short amount of time, Ray, here's our segue.
Absolutely.
They can come to the American Museum of Science and Energy on December the 6th, which may be today,
2 o'clock,
2 o'clock. And you can have an opportunity free of charge to see a 20th anniversary screening of Secret City, the Oak Ridge Story, The War Years, which tells the story of what happened in Oak Ridge during the Manhattan Project and how Oak Ridge came to be established as a nuclear superpower, as it is today. So we're going to have a special screening of that.
And we're going to have a panel that's going to talk a little bit about it. And I'll guarantee you Manhattan 2.0, Manhattan Project 2.0 will be a part of the discussion.
I'm sure it will. I'm sure it will. So,
oh, man.
All right. Well, thank you. Thank you, Wade. Thank you, Ray. And
Thank you.
Thanks for watching. We'll be back in a couple of weeks with another Hidden History.